Senator Manchin making headlines at the No Labels town hall. The bipartisan group is gearing up to launch what it calls its common sense agenda. It contains ideas on how to tackle issues facing Americans every day, laid out in the broadest and most milquetoast ways. For example, on page 56, idea 27 says, quote, "Every American deserves respect and freedom from discrimination, ... What on earth are they doing?
Well, this is not the first time they've laid out an agenda. Their 2016 agenda, they said that by 2030 they were going to balance the budget. Just for the record, since 2016, we have added extraordinarily
Trillions.
to our...
Trillions.
We have not balanced the budget. And so that's the problem, Leland, right? Is like they can have the agenda. And look, I am sympathetic
by the way,
to the argument. People don't want just one of two options, but so skeptical of this organization and the leadership.
You brought up the budget. Hold on. They're not giving up, though, on this idea. Congress owes it to every American, to the American people to pass a budget every year and to do it on time. If Congress doesn't pass the required annual budget and spending bills on time, members should not be paid until they do. ...
Hey, I'm for that.
Puppies are very cute.
But there are lots of millionaires on the Hill.
Yeah.
By the way, what difference does that make?
But how do they expect to be? Look, we can all agree that Biden-Trump rematch is not what the American people want. We have that. How can these guys be taken seriously if they can't actually put together meaningful policy proposals that don't in some way perhaps irritate somebody?
But here's a bigger problem. The no labels and the left and the right, there's a sliver that's far left, there's a sliver that's far right. The majority of Americans, Republicans and Democrats, and even really elected officials, unless you count the GOP because they're held hostage by Trump MAGA voters, America is in the middle. And the majority of the voters are in the middle, right, and they're accustomed to voting Democrat and Republican. This is all fancy stuff, if you will, to tantalize you about a third-party candidacy, but it's just not happening. It's not going anywhere fast. And if you look at the reports, the no labels, the majority of the money going to no labels is being contributed by large Republican donors.
Yeah, and it's going into the pockets of the consultants who are running no labels. They got Joe Lieberman, failed vice presidential candidate, to talk about what he believes would be the vision. Take a listen.
If the polling next year shows, after the two parties have chosen their nominees, that in fact we will help elect one or another candidate, we're not going to get involved. The problem is not the third choice that no labels is offering the American people. The problem is the American people are not buying what the two parties are selling.
All right, and he says that we're not going to help elect one candidate or another. How do you not siphon votes from one party or the other?
This group helps Republicans, and anybody who doesn't acknowledge that is lying to themselves. So Joe Manchin, in the back of his mind, knows what he's doing. And look, if you want to help Republicans, be honest about it. But Joe Manchin is of a mixed mind right now. And the reality is this, he's got to think about his legacy. He's coming up on what could be a re-election, or could be a massive failure and boot him out of the public eye forever. I've known Joe Manchin about 20 years, and I can tell you, this is a guy who's ascended the ranks of the state government. This is now, he's sitting in a hot federal seat where he's relevant every day. This is a continuation of wanting to be relevant. But this group has so many problems. I was a young staffer on Capitol Hill in 2010 when they launched. Back then, nobody took them seriously. What's changed now is how much they have in the coffers. So much money. So what I think this agenda does nothing, doesn't move the needle. What we'll hear in New Hampshire tonight will be more speculation about nothing. Who nobody is speaking to is the younger voter that is so upset about the labels, and no labels, funny enough, has never addressed the elephant in the room.
Bill, I want to pick up something Scott said. Scott talked about the folks in the center, right? And there is a radical center in America that feels as though America isn't working anymore. And I think about, some of the common sense agenda. A world led by America is safer than a world led by Russia and China would be. It's in America's interest to work with our allies to advance our mutual interest. Again, how do you expect to be bold and visionary? How can a group be bold and visionary if they're neither bold nor visionary in their statements.
Well, what I enjoy is this conversation around the table, watching the consternation of the Democrats that sit around me about the prospect
I'm
that
still a
Joe
good R.
Manchin.
That's just spirit. It's not consternation.
Yeah, it's fair. But, you know, bringing us back to reality, one of the problems that No Labels has is ballot access. If you don't have party access on the ballot, then they're going to have to go out and do the labor-intensive petition process in each of the states to get them on. Now, I believe they've achieved ballot access in a limited number of states, which could sway the election in those states, but this is still a state-by-state election for President of the United States. And if No Labels can't even get it, then this is nothing but propaganda.
You know, they're following this data and this polling that says something like 46 to 49% of the voters would consider a third-party candidate. They didn't ask them whether they would vote for a third-party candidate, and that's misleading. And if you read that data and you follow it, you're going up the wrong tree.
And who the candidate is, right? Let's be real. Like, leadership is not following the polls, and they've got a lot of people who wouldn't have even won in their own primaries now trying to make a race at the national stage. If you want to poll George Clooney, Matthew McConaughey, you know, The Rock, like you want to poll Scarlett Johansson, maybe you got a
Michelle
chance.
Running for what, though? Yeah, but running for what, though?
Mrs.
Any
Obama's
office?
not running
The
against
reality
Obama.
is we're coming up on the most consequential presidential election since the Civil War.
Oh, everybody says
And
that every
no,
year.
it's
Every
the
4
truth.
years.
It's the truth. A Biden and
They're right
Trump
about
rematch.
that. The Republicans are right about that. We say that every 4 years.
A Biden-Trump rematch? Would that not be the most consequential thing we've ever seen?
Well,
if we get
if
one of those
Trump-
octogenarians back in the White House, come on now. Come on.
It is. This is going to be the interesting thing. Is truly, like, I think America is ready for a next generation of leadership.
For sure.
And the people who are on stage tonight at the No Labels event, they are not that.
I will agree on that bit.
Or are they on stage when the Democrats have their debates or the Republicans have theirs debate? That's a really important
There's no
question.
debate on the Dem side, my friend.
No, there is no
Got your
debate.
guy.
I think one of the questions you have to ask,
But it doesn't
though-
represent the next generation of leadership.
But one of the
Either
questions
party,
you have
or
to
either
ask,
party.
if Joe Biden had great numbers, if Joe Biden was extremely popular, if a majority of Americans didn't want him not to run again, do you think No Labels would be up in New Hampshire right now exploring the possibility?
Well, No Labels.
But
is
if
And I
around
think
for
what
a
it
long
really
time.
does is it
the nominee or
exposes.
expected to be the
I think it
nominee.
benefits
It's the
the
same question.
consultants to
Yeah,
Leland's
it benefits.
point.
So, I want to just tell you, because I think you guys touched on something really important. I actually had a Democratic strategist on the 7 p.m. show Friday who talked about this. The one thing Republicans are talking about is Joe Biden's age, and then one thing they're not doing is providing an alternative to Joe Biden's
right.
age.
Right.
In the same way, nor is No Labels.
That's right.
You've got John Huntsman, who was Utah governor and thought his father was going to buy him the presidency. That didn't work very well. You got Joe Lieberman, who failed 9 ways to Sunday, including as a vice presidential nominee. Okay, and you've got Joe Manchin, who fabulous retail politician, but is not where either party is right now, and no one's going to argue he's the next generation of leadership. Yeah. I guess the question is that why would they, of all people, not look to a younger generation to try and do this?
That's what I'm very curious, because the people on stage tonight are not that.
We have a system that rewards the incumbent, and the incumbent always knows that. So when you do this independently minded stuff that Huntsman and Lieberman and now Manchin does, right? They tease with a little bit of, I'm a centrist, I'm independently minded. You're going to get a group like this saying, rah-rah, system Bobby wants you.
People like Will Hurd or somebody
This is
like
when
that.
you'll get it. This is when you'll get it. After 2024, if Biden wins, the Democrats will be looking for new leadership, whether that's the vice president or otherwise. The Republicans, no matter what happens, if they don't win or if they do win, if it's Donald Trump or not, they're going to be looking for new leadership because the age of both Biden and Trump alone is more than enough.
Requires
for
a
them
reset.
Requires a reset.